Wind knives off the Mogollon rim. He arrives with a soft, wet deed. They meet him with 4 hard winters and a swinging brass key. Then a whiteout puts the law on trial. Stay and earn a home. Leave and let the river keep your name like a debt. The wind came off the rim with teeth. It gnawed the leather and the man alike, found the seams in Caleb Rourke's coat, stung the cracks in his knuckles. His breath went white and stringy in the air. The deed in his inside pocket had gone soft at the edges. Wool damp from days of writing. Rowdy, the sorrel with a sullen eye and honest feet, took the slope in a slow, careful zig. Iron rang on stone, then fell quiet under a skin of drifted powder. Love this tale? Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep the West wild. The country lay open and colorless, juniper black, snow blue sky, the hard tin of a stove lid. Far below, a creek course cut a dark stitch through the basin. He kept his eyes on it the way a man keeps his eyes on a line of writing he hopes will forgive him. Judge Halbert only comes up once a month, the old man said. Caleb hadn't heard the sled until it was there beside him. A plank runner, a gray mule breathing smoke, a rider bundled in old army wool. The man's beard had gone the color of twine. He spat neat and sideways and grinned without showing teeth. "Ike Burdett," he said, as if that settled anything. "You Rourke?" Caleb touched his brim. "Yes, sir." "Figure you'd be paper boy." Ike jerked a thumb toward the valley. "Halbert crawls up from town when the roads fit. Miss that train, winter'll hand down the verdict instead. Don't appeal snow, don't appeal wind. They don't sit long." Caleb nodded. The deed pressed like a hot coal against his ribs, though it was nothing but wet paper and promises from a man with a tidy signature. "I aim to be ready when the judge comes," he said. "Clerk Simmons reads loud," Ike went on, "louder than a man's calluses. He'll stamp whatever's on his desk, sure as a church bell, and Ed Tolliver down to the scales, he reads the stamp even louder." Ike looked Caleb over, taking his measure the way a horse trader measures fetlocks. "You got more than paper?" "I brought 2 good hands and a stubborn mind," Caleb said. "Figure to pay what I owe in sweat." Ike's grin widened the smallest inch. "Mean winter for a man with only that, but it'll try you honest." He flicked his lines, and the mule leaned into it. The sled creaked, ropes sang. "Gate you want is over on Juniper Draw," Ike called back. "You'll know it when you see it. This country leaves a sign." Caleb rode on. The wind changed and brought the faintest tang of ash and tallow. Somebody somewhere cooking simple and close to the fire. He told himself it was a camp down in the timber, a freighter maybe, some cowhand with a skillet and a poor cut of meat. He told himself many things on that ride. Keep your head down, don't ask, don't promise, don't belong. The track to Juniper Draw split from the main trace like a thought a man didn't mean to think. He took it. The draw opened like a cupped hand. Juniper crouched under white mounds. Fence posts standing hip-deep in drifts with their wires sung tight as fiddle strings. On a far stretch of rail, the country did what Ike promised. It left a sign there, swinging gentle in the breath of the day. Hung a brass key big as a man's palm, greened at the edges, polished on the face by years of fingers. It hung from a leather thong on the corner post of a hay barn gate. No name, no warning, just the shape of permission and the weight of duty, a token that said house and also said work. He reined in without meaning to and watched the key turn, flash dull gold, turn again. He could smell sheep tallow from his own gear, the old habit of greasing harness against the cold. The scent brought a store back to him, a narrow place on San Francisco Street where the lamps smoked and the ledger bled red, where a woman's hands had gone still. When he told the truth, too late. He breathed once, in through his teeth. and let the past slide out with the steam. Rowdy tossed his head. Caleb put a glove to the horse's neck, felt the heat under the coat, the proof of life that didn't ask questions. "Easy," he said. It was meant for both of them. Downslope, the drifted world held its breath. No voices carried, no stock bawled. Only wind and the small scrape of iron when Rowdy shifted. Caleb studied the gate a long moment, the brass key winking slow as a heartbeat, and the old man's words walked back through his mind. Judge once a month. Clerk reads paper loud. Winter reads louder. He tucked the maw of the deed deeper under his coat and buttoned it high. Then he put his heels to Rowdy and rode toward the gate with the key that might open a door or close it, depending on what kind of man he chose to be when the wind finished talking. The gate latch was a simple twist of wire. The brass key hung inches from his glove as he eased it back. He didn't touch the key. He felt it looking at him anyway. Down in the draw, a thin column of smoke rose clean and straight, the kind a steady hand keeps. A barn of adobe and timber sat with its back to the wind, roof thatched tight, hay stacked under a skin of canvas and yucca rope, crisscrossed smart as stitching. A stone-lined rill cut past the porch. Every few breaths a dark mouth upstream burped a measured spill, just enough to keep the channel muttering instead of freezing. Somebody had taught the water to mind a clock. Caleb swung down, dropped Rowdy's reins, and walked in open with his hands where a nervous soul could see them. He heard work before he saw faces, knife on hemp, a broom rasping adobe, the clean snap of a gate hook. Seating home. The first of them stepped out from the shade of the porch. She was young and not the way women get when weather and decision lay their hands on a face early. Hair braided close, a band of silver and turquoise at the eye, wrist so scuffed it was more tool than ornament. Her eyes took him in without hurry. "You're on Juniper Draw," she said. "What are you wanting here?" "My name's Caleb Rourke." He felt the deed move when he said it. "I'm looking for the owner of this place." "You found us," she answered. No flinch, no apology, no smile. Anna gray eyes. Two others came into view as if they'd been there the whole time. One, narrow-shouldered, quick-eyed, tucked a length of yucca rope under a cross-tie and leaned on it with a small grunt, making the haystack sing tight. The youngest had a hat pulled low and a scarf up against the sting. She knelt by the rill with a pole flicking ice skins off the lip with a surgeon's neatness. "June Redbird," said the rope worker, giving the knot a last tug. A corner of her mouth ticked. "That one's Mesa Rose. She listens first." Caleb set his hat back a notch so they could see his face plain. "Afternoon to you. I bought this spread from a man named Ephraim Pike." He pulled the folded paper from his coat and kept it low, not like a pistol, more like a prayer he wasn't sure how to hold. "I've got the deed." Anna's gaze dropped to the paper, then to his hands, then past him at the horse. Tack kept decent and mended honest. She breathed once through her nose the way a person does when counting. "We've got 4 winters," she said. June pushed a hair out of her eye with the back of her wrist. "Deed warms a pocket," she said, gentle as teasing. "Fire warms a house." Mesa rose from the rill, the pole dripping. A chip of ice clinked on stone. She watched him from under the brim and said nothing. Her eyes went to the brass key on the porch beam, the twin of the one at the gate, and back to him as if to ask which hand he thought he had a right to use. Caleb put the paper away. The move surprised even him. "I don't aim to crowd anybody," he said. "I came to see what I paid for and meet who's here. That's the truth of it." "Truth's a good start," Anna said. She tipped her chin toward Rowdy. "Stable's warm. Your horse can drink at the spill. Don't walk him through the rill. We keep it moving on purpose." "I can see that." He crouched by the channel without touching it, watched the slow pulse from the upstream box. You're releasing on account? June's eyes brightened a shade. Sun up and sun down longer, noon shorter, wind from the north wants it fast. West wind, we neck it down or it sheets. She said it plain, not to show off, just the way a hand reports a fence line. Caleb nodded. Smart. Mesa slid the pole along the stones and tapped a thin rind free. She scuffed it off with her boot and stepped back. Her voice, when it came, was low and even. You said Pike sold it. He did. Caleb felt the cold find the seam of his collar. Sold it hard and cheap. Pike sells many things he doesn't own, Anna said. Sometimes it is only words. Sometimes it is other people's work. The wind pushed a drift of blue smoke under the porch roof and brought with it the round smell of corn mush and the clean animal weight of sheep tallow. Rowdy whickered, deciding about the place same as his rider. I'm not here to run anybody off, Caleb said. He was surprised to hear the thread of plea in his voice. He cleared it. I'd like to know how things stand. Anna looked at June. June looked at Mesa. A whole council passed between them in the time it takes a kettle to burble once. How things stand and, Anna said at last, is winter. Cattle to hold, hay to keep dry, water not to freeze. You brought paper, we brought 4 winters and the boards under your boots. She tilted her head toward the porch. Come to the edge and talk. We don't invite strangers over the threshold until we know their names down to the mistakes. But a man can stand by the door and be heard just fine. Caleb climbed the 2 steps and stopped short of the line where shadow became house. The brass key hung eye-high, close enough to touch. He could see the wear where thumbs had skimmed it. The dull places, the bright. He kept his hands at his sides. Fair enough, he said. June leaned against the post, rope coiled on her shoulder like a tame snake. You got a stamp on that paper? Not yet. Clerk Simmons keeps the ink. Judge Halbert comes up when the road does. June's mouth ticked again. Law's slow on a good day. Storm ain't, Mesa said. The kettle inside made a tiny, agreeable sound. For a moment no one spoke. Wind worried the yucca lashings, and they held. Water talked to stone in its small voice. Somewhere out in the blank country, a calf bawled and then thought better of it. Anna folded her arms, not in challenge, only to keep her heat. You can stable your horse, she said. You can warm your hands at the porch stove. You can say your piece. After that we will say ours. That's how it stands. Caleb looked once at the key, once at the faces set against the cold, and felt the deed's weight again, lighter than he remembered. He nodded. I'll see to my horse, he said. Then I'll say my piece. They kept him on the porch long enough for the cold to find his knees and make a case for leaving. He stayed. A man who quits early learns the wrong lesson. June set a little iron stove by the jamb, fed it 2 fingers of pignol, and swung the door shut with a click. Heat walked out slow and even. Caleb held his hands near it and felt the sting come back to his knuckles, that mean ache of thaw. Say your piece, Anna told him. He said it plain, name where he rode from, the man who took his dollars, the stamp he hadn't got, no ornament, no beg-off. When he was done, the wind made a long sound under the eaves, like the house answering for them. Anna nodded once. All right, she said. Now you'll listen to ours. June brought a 3-leg stool and sat the way a hand sits at the end of a day. Hips forward, shoulders loose, work still humming inside the bones. First winter we cut mud for adobe till our palms bled, she said. I read the sky wrong that year, thought the wind would swing south. It didn't. Storm stampeded the cattle and I was out of line to the draw. Lost 2 calves we could have saved if I'd held to the ridge. She rubbed her thumb along a groove in the stool leg, as if it were a map. Don't misread wind any more. Mesa leaned the pole against the wall, pulled her scarf down. She had a narrow scar at the jaw, white as chalk against winter skin. "My brother fell through river ice when I was small," she said. "Eyes on the rill, not on Caleb. He was fast, water was faster. I hear it under the ice sometimes before a storm. Don't like it, doesn't matter. Ice don't care either way." She met his gaze at last. No brag, no plea, just a ledger entry. Love this tale? Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep the West wild. Anna stood with her back to the house and her face to the draw, one arm folded, the other hand cupped at her elbow, like she was holding a weight no one could see. "I married a white trader who liked his own stories," she said. "He liked other women's stories, too. When he left, he took the stamp and left the fences. So we made our own stamp. Nobody moves anything here without everyone seeing it and saying yes. That is our law." Caleb let each sentence set before he reached for it. He could feel the old itch to say the right thing, buy a little mercy with a string of words. He swallowed it. He had talked his way into too many corners. "What about town?" he asked after a time. "You sell there. You need a scale. You need a buyer." "Ed Tolliver weighs light when he doesn't like a face," June said. "We bring our own check weight now. He doesn't laugh at that anymore." "And Wade Haskins buys cattle," Mesa added, mouth gone flat. "He pretends not to hear a woman speak prices." Anna's eyes didn't change, but he felt something colder move through her voice. "Last spring, I stood in the street and named a number." Wade looked at the sky like he'd been hailed on and asked if there was a man to speak for the ranch. She paused. "There was not. We hauled our cattle home, sold lean to small hands who paid fair. We lost money to teach the lesson. We will teach it again if needed." A shape crossed the basin. Two riders hunched against the wind, Jeet behind with a swayback mule. They kept to the far fence and didn't look up. Work traveled this country on quiet runners. Caleb's fingers had warmed enough to itch. He flexed them. The deed throbbed against his ribs for the first time like a bad tooth. "You're saying what I think you're saying," he said. "Town hears paper like a shout and sweat like a whisper." June grinned with half her mouth. "That's the poetry of it." He looked at the brass key hanging from the beam. The face of it had been touched so many times. It showed two bright ovals where thumbs had lived. He saw it at the gate again in his mind, turning, not asking anything, not promising either. A token that meant, "Earn this." "Who keeps the key?" he asked. "All of us," Anna said. "Nobody pockets it. Key hangs where eyes can find it. If the door is locked, it is because we decided together to keep something in or out." Caleb nodded. "Good law?" Anna's gaze searched him the way a rider searches a storm line, looking for the hole in it. "We're not asking for your law," she said. We're telling you ours." "I hear you." Wind shifted. The smoke line leaned. June looked up, measuring nothing and everything. "North is coming round," she said. "We'll open the spill a notch at sundown." "Open it too far and it sheets across the yard," Mesa warned. June flicked her a glance. "I remember." A crow banged past, black against the white and tin. Rowdy shook his mane and settled again, trusting the smell of hay and the hum of used tools. Inside the doorway, pots ticked, the small metal sounds of a meal staying warm. Caleb cleared his throat. The words came hard but clean. "I can put a man's name where town needs one," he said. "I can't tell a lie for it. I can't carry a story I don't believe. I've done enough of that for 2 lives." Anna didn't answer at once. She watched his face the way a doctor watches pain. "Then don't," she said. "You can stand in the street and name a fair price, or you can ride on and leave us to our own winter. Either way, you will do what you say." From down in the flats, faint and far, came the slow thump of a stamp mill, or a man's heart when it has made up its mind. Caleb let the sound run through him, He thought of Clerk Simmons with his tidy stamp, Judge Halbert and his once-a-month mercy, Tolliver's scale arm twitching, Haskins' polished boots, and the way the wind had read him raw all morning. "I'll stable my horse," he said. "Then I'll fix the loose board on your west pen. It's clattering. Spooks a calf." June's eyebrow made a quick hop. "You heard that?" "I heard it," he said. Mesa picked up the pole again. "We'll see if your hammer reads truer than your paper," she said, and it wasn't unkind. He stepped off the porch. As he passed the key, the leather thong turned, and the brass disc glanced his sleeve. He didn't flinch, didn't touch it, didn't look back. The porch boards creaked once and held. Behind him, Anna called, "Supper goes on at dark. Fire belongs to anybody working." The wind bit his cheeks as if to remind him of its vote. He put a hand on Rowdy's neck and felt the horse lean into it, warm and sure. "All right," he told the animal, and maybe the key, and maybe himself. "We'll start there." He fixed the clatter on the west pen with 2 cut nails and a bit of horsehair for a shim. The wind lost a toy and moved on. By the time he rubbed Rowdy dry and set a blanket on the sorrel, dusk had turned the snow the color of pewter, and kitchen light made a warm square on the yard. Anna met him at the porch line with a tin dipper. "Wash," she said, nodding toward a basin where steam curled. Lie bit the cracks in each in his fingers and then soothed them. He dried on a length of flour sack and stepped to the edge of the threshold. The brass key hung within reach, the leather thong creaking soft as a breathing thing. He kept his hands to his sides. "Tonight," Anna said, "everybody belongs to the fire. Tomorrow we talk paper." "Fair by me." They ate close to the stove. Corn mush in wooden bowls, a pan of fry bread breaking open with a sigh, beans that tasted of smoke and a winter hoard of onions. Sheep tallow made the room smell clean in a way only hard places understand. Caleb waited for the quick reach, the old habit of taking more when a man is on the move. It didn't come. He measured his share and found it enough. June tore a piece of bread and set it on the rim of his bowl, as if lodging him proper at the table without saying so. "Barnes honest," she said, a smile shading one corner. "Keeps a man humble." "I could use some humbling," he answered. It got him a soft huff from Mesa, which in that room counted as a company. Mesa ate slow, eyes half-lidded, listening to the stove tick. She had the habit of a person who keeps track of small sounds. When the rill outside burped a thin change, she tipped her head the way a horse follows a scent, then let it go. "You work neat," June said, nodding toward the hammer he'd set by the door. "Board's quiet now. Calves won't waste heat spooking at a ghost." "I like things that don't talk when they don't have to," Caleb said. He took a swallow of coffee black as soot, and better than most prayers. After they ate, June cleared bowls and came back with a little slate board and a nub of chalk. She drew an arrow, then another, then a set of short hatch marks along a line that stood for the ridge. "North's been slouching all day," she said, half to herself, half to the room. "By morning it'll square up. We'll open the spill 2-finger widths at first light, not 3. 3 sheets the yard if the gusts lay flat." Mesa set her cup down. 2.5 is stingy." 2.5, June allowed, clicking her tongue once. "You'll stand on the gate and call it." Caleb watched the marks bloom on the slate, simple math in a hard grammar. The store in Santa Fe had kept a ledger full of numbers that believed what men told them. This board believed the wind. Anna poured a last round from the pot and took her own place by the jam, where the house and the world shook hands. "Clerk Simmons rides up next week," she said, eyes on the door as if she meant to tell the weather first. "He gathers papers for the relief hay. Whoever stands on the line at the courthouse gets first cut." Her gaze came to Caleb and held. "That is the way of town." Caleb nodded. "Ike told me." Judge Halbert once a month, if the trail will let him. Town reads paper loud, Anna said. Out here we keep another book with another ink. Silence then, not the empty kind, but the kind that lets a thing settle. The stove ticked. Snow slid off a yucca rope in a small, tidy thump. Caleb felt the old itch to promise too much, to prove himself with words. He let it pass like a gust that dies against a hill. I'll take the barn, he said. Don't mean to crowd a house that isn't mine. Anna's mouth didn't bend, but something eased behind her eyes. Blankets are in the cedar chest by the tack, she said. There's a lantern that burns true if you trim it right. June handed him a rolled wool and a stub of candle. Mind the calico cat. She thinks the haymow is hers. Mesa stood and wrapped a scarf, preparing for a last check of the yard. At the door she hesitated, then glanced at him. If you wake and hear water, she said, voice even, it's the spill talking. It is not the river breaking. The river will tell us different, and we'll move. I'll listen, he said. He stepped back into the cold. The sky had gone iron flat, a lid pressed down over the basin. He could feel snow thinking about being mean. He crossed to the barn, breath smoking, boots squeaking on the hard pack. Behind him the porch light made a box on the snow, and the brass key swung once as the door eased shut. In the barn, Rowdy turned his head and blew a soft, hay-scented breath into Caleb's collar. The calico cat regarded him from the mow, judged him adequate, and vanished into straw. He shook the blanket out, laid it near the saddle rack, and set the candle where its stub of light would not start a story nobody wanted. He lay down with his coat over him, and the frost sharpening the rafters, and listened. The place spoke in plain words, wood settling, sheep shuffling, a cow's low breath, wind feeling for cracks, and finding none worth bragging about. From the yard came the steady count of water where June had set it. Not a song, not a threat, just a metronome a man could live by. He closed his eyes and felt towns fall away, the stamp, the scale, the neat desk, and in their place the weight of a key he hadn't earned yet, and a rule that made sense. Fire tonight, talk tomorrow. He could keep that law. He let the cold pinch his nose and the wool itch his neck, and found himself smiling in the dark at nothing in particular, which was more comfort than he'd had in a long while. Sun came up thin and bitter. June opened the spill 2 fingers and a whisper. Mesa stood on the gatepost, calling it a hair tighter when a square gust shouldered down the draw. The air had that chalk feel that means snow is sharpening somewhere you can't see. They heard the iron before they saw the men. 3 riders, tack clinking, a 4th behind on a sled with a tarped crate. The lead horse wore a breastplate studded like a gambler's belt. The rider's coat was town black and too clean for work. "Clay Doolin," June said, and spat the other way. He reined up at the porch line and looked past Caleb to the key on the beam as if it owed him a bow. He had a roll of paper tied with a red string and a tin seal that clacked against the buckle of his glove. "Morning," he said. "I ride for Ephraim Pike, duly authorized. This hay is to be sealed against unlawful use pending proper transfer. You can save yourselves trouble by standing back while I affix notice." Anna didn't move. "Morning," she answered. This hay was stacked by the hands standing here. You can save yourself frostbite by turning around." Doolin smiled in a way that never reached his eyes. He lifted the paper. The wind tried to take it. He pinched it tight and read, "Words about liens, attachments, signatures in a clerk's tidy crawl." Caleb watched the stamp mark, Simmons' boxy hand, and felt his ribs tighten with a foolish heat, like shame for something he hadn't done yet. "County recognizes Pike's claim," Doolin said, voice smooth. "I affix this seal, and the hay stays put till the judge sorts it fair. Anyone breaks it is subject to—" A second set of runners hissed through crusted snow. Ike Burdett slid in, mule blowing steam, shotgun laid easy across his knees like a sleeping dog. "Paperman," Ike said, as if greeting weather. "I see you brought a bell to ring at the storm." Doolin's lip twitched. "This is county business, old-timer." Love this tale? Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep the West wild. "County don't ride a grader up here when the drifts sit belly high," Ike said mildly. "Snow don't read deeds, boy. It takes what ain't tied down and laughs while you argue." Sergeant Mallory came last, wool greatcoat white at the seams, Fort Apache cap pulled low. He had the look of somebody who slept in his coat often and didn't mind it. "Morning," he said, nodding all around. "Got a message from Captain Orr. Blizzard's coming down off the rim. Blind stuff. There's an ice plug up the Salt Fork that'll go sideways when the pressure's right. You got hay stacked close?" "Close enough," June said. "We'll pull a lip on the spill and turn the push." Mallory's eyes went to the rill, the tidy lashings, the way the barn tucked its shoulder to the wind. He didn't grin, but his mustache shifted like a man who has seen good work and feels better for it. Then he clocked Doolin's purr and let out a small breath he might use later to cuss. "Sergeant," Doolin said, tilting the roll for effect, "you'll witness me affixing the county seal." Mallory ran a thumb down his jaw. "I'll witness what I see," he said. "What I see is Winter walking in with a club." Doolin swung off and stomped out a place in the snow like a man staking a claim. He set his little tin contraption against the barn door, right over the latch, found his stamp, and looked at Caleb as if choosing a witness who'd be useful later. "Mr. Rourke," Caleb said. Doolin's smile came like a knife shown quick. "Mr. Rourke, you'll do. You purchased this property from Ephraim Pike. Sensible decision." He held the paper half toward Caleb, half toward the sky. "A man of property understands order." Caleb tasted iron in the back of his mouth. He saw the stamp in Simmons's hand, Tolliver's scale arm twitching, Haskins's shiny boots. He saw, too, a brass key that didn't live in any pocket, and a spill that breathed on account set by wind and not by men like Pike. He kept his face still. "I understand winter," he said, "and cattle that don't live on promises." Doolin's jaw ticked once. He bent to set his seal. Anna stepped one pace, not fast, not slow. "You set that," she said softly, "and you own what happens if the river breaks and the hay can't move." "That's on the court," Doolin said. "On paper." "Paper don't pitch hay," Ike put in. "Paper don't chase cows in a whiteout. Paper don't bury calves." Mallory looked at the sky the way a scout looks at a ridge he's crossed too many times. "Mr. Doolin," he said, voice going tight at the edges, "my captain will want the ranches along this draw to hold stock through 2, maybe 3 days of blind drift. If you hobble their hay with a toy and a ribbon, you'll answer for it to more than a judge." Doolin went red along the cheekbones. "This is not Army concern." "Everything's Army concern when—" "Dead cows block a road," Mallory said. "The wind came down the draw in a long, cold sheet. Snow lifted in powders and swung sidewise. The mule flattened his ears. Rowdy stamped and blew. Somewhere upstream the spill coughed and then found its count again. Doolin held the stamp to the tin and pressed. It made a little official pop. He stood, brushed his glove where a flake had dared to land, and looked pleased with the noise the way a boy looks pleased with a cap pistol. "Affixed," he said. Anna's mouth was a straight line. She didn't look at Caleb. Caleb didn't look at her. He looked at the tin circle stuck to the barn like a joke that would be less funny by dark. "I'll be back with Pike when the judge rides," Doolin said, gathering his papers. "See that nobody tampers with county property." He swung up. His men turned their horses with more care than he deserved, and pushed into the whitening air. The sled hissed, the crate bumped, and then they were a smudge on the rim of sight. Silence slid into the space they left, meaner than before. Snow began to wander in lazy, disloyal flakes. Mallory exhaled and tucked his scarf. "You'll want lines cut to the draw and back," he said. "Torches, if you've got them. I'll write a message down canyon. If that plug goes, you'll hear it, like a log rolling in your chest." "Appreciate it," Anna said. He touched 2 fingers to his cap, then to the key as if saluting a flag, and was gone. Caleb stood with the tin seal glinting at his shoulder. He could feel Ike's eyes on him, could feel June watching the rill and Mesa counting the gusts. Ike cleared his throat. "Well, paper boy?" Caleb looked at the barn, at the hay they'd sweated into place, at the brass key that said house and work and together. He felt the old temptation to step where it was easy. The courthouse, the stamp, the nice, simple lie of being right, because a box had been checked. The wind answered for him, stinging his teeth. "We cut lines," he said. "We lay torches, we make room to move hay. If the river talks wrong, and we do it now?" They worked till their breaths smoked thick, and their sleeves went remmed at the cuffs. Lines were cut with willow wands every 50 paces from barn to draw and back again, breadcrumb trails a man could follow blind with a mittened hand. Torches waited in buckets by the porch, pitch knots and rag, a row of small suns asleep. When the light thinned to iron and the cold began to speak in bone, Anna called them in to the threshold. No farther. The brass key swung, dull and steady. The deed in Caleb's pocket burned like a lie. He took it out and set it on the porch table where this wind could read it. He put his pocket knife beside it, bone scales polished by years, edge nicked from fence work and poor decisions. He kept his hands away when they wanted to fidget, same way you keep a colt from feeling your nerves. "My piece," he said, "all of it." No one nodded. That was their way, no help, no hindrance. Let a man climb his own words. "I bought paper from Pike, cheap because I was hungry to be somebody the stamp would recognize." His breath showed, then vanished. "I can put my name where town wants it. I can stand at Tolliver's scale and sign Haskins' bill, but I won't do it if it makes me partner to a theft, on paper or otherwise." June leaned a hip to the post, eyes on the spill beyond his shoulder. "Terms," she said. "4 ways," Caleb answered. "Profit, work, say so. Nothing moves, money, hay, cattle, key, unless every one of us says yes. If trust breaks, I sign over whatever paper I hold to the 3 of you and ride out with what I came on. No court, no whining." Wind combed the yucca ropes, and they sang a little like a fiddle far away. Anna looked at the deed as if it were a coyote skulking past a chicken house. Real enough, not worth panic, worth watching. Mesa's scarf was pulled down, her mouth made a straight, honest line. "That's easy talk in good weather." "Storm's the judge I brought it to," Caleb said. "Storm is right here." Anna didn't look at him when she spoke. "Before we say a thing, we want your mistakes. Not the church version, the one you don't tell a stranger." Caleb had carried that box a long way. He set it down now and opened it without touching anything else. "I ran a store in Santa Fe," he said. "Sold beans and bolts and coffee poor as peanuts. Took in messages for the telegraph when the operator was out foxing. One night a payroll man came through with a bag he wore like a baby. He handed a slip for the line, route, day, mile markers. My job was to pass it straight." He swallowed the grit in his mouth. "I left the slip on the counter while I counted a drawer. A teamster saw what he shouldn't. He told somebody who told somebody with guns. They hit the payroll north of Galisteo. 2 men dead. The operator came back and said it was on me. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I didn't argue loud enough to know. Folks didn't want my coffee after that. The woman who'd promised me spring left before snow. I learned how to lock a drawer. Didn't learn quick enough how to lock my pride. The porch took it in. The house wood ticked. Somewhere a sheep coughed like an old lady clearing her throat. June's face didn't change, but the angle of her shoulder softened, like a mare setting a better foot. You read wind better than you used to. I read what hurts me first, he said. Try to keep it from hurting anybody else. Mesa's eyes were river dark. You afraid of living with people, she asked, or of yourself? Both, Caleb said, and it landed square because it was true. June reached inside, came back with her slate and chalk nub. She drew a quick map. The draw, the yard, the rill, the hay, wind arrows flattening from the north. My count for the spill, she said, tapping. The marks. If I'm wrong, it sheets and eats the yard. Hold me to it, no easy outs because I talk pretty. Caleb nodded. We all stand on our numbers. Anna finally turned to him. Her eyes were steady, not unkind. You put your name in town for us and with us, she said, not over us. You stand at the scale and you don't blink when Wade tries to make you forget our price. You keep the key where it hangs. You don't pocket it ever. The key hangs, he said. Law, as you said. She studied his face a while longer, then glanced to the knife on the table. That yours? My father's before whiskey found him, he said. I've kept it sharper than I kept myself. Anna lifted the brass key from its thong on the beam and set it next to the deed and the knife. The metal looked old as a promise and twice as heavy. Paper, she said, touching the deed with one finger. House, touching the key. Hand to the knife. We don't choose paper first. Caleb put both palms open on the table so they could see he meant to touch nothing that wasn't given. You decide, he said. Storm's coming either way. The wind shoved a blind taste of snow under the porch. It stung like a warning. June tilted her head, listening to the spill. North has settled, she murmured. We'll open another half-finger at full dark. Mesa wrapped her scarf again. If the ice plug talks, it'll talk like a drum in your chest. Ike's sled hissed up out of the dusk. He didn't climb the steps. He didn't need to. He looked once at the table, deed, knife, key, and snorted. Looks like a man's choosing what not to steal, he said. Good start. Anna held Caleb's gaze one last beat, then nodded, not big, not small, just enough to move the world. Partners, she said. On our law, we say yes together or we don't move. You stand in town with our names in your mouth, and you don't spit them out when the room gets cold. I won't, Caleb said. June slid the slate toward him. Put your mark, she said. Not because it means anything to the storm, because it'll mean something to you when you're tired. He scratched a neat C. Rourke in chalk beside June's arrows. It looked homely and right. Anna set the brass key back on the thong. It swung once and settled. She left the deed where it lay, outside the bin, where the one could have it if it wanted. She picked up the knife and pressed it back into Caleb's palm. Keep what's yours, she said. Do what you said. The first real flakes came then, fat and careless, and then not careless at all. The world narrowed to the pool of lamplight and the sound of water counting. Caleb tucked the knife away and felt how a small weight could steady a bigger one. Torches at the ready, Anna said. Ropes set. We'll sleep in our coats and take turns. If the river speaks, we run. Caleb looked at the key, at the slate, at the three women who had just let a man into the weather of their house. All right, he said. We'll hold. Love this tale? Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep the West wild. Snow shouldered down at dusk and then forgot how to stop. By full dark, the world was a chalk slate wiped clean. The willow wands they'd planted from porch to draw rose like thin black ribs. Wind took the yard in long, blind strokes. It found seams and made them complain. Torches, Anna said. Caleb struck pitch knots to life, set them along the line, low flames belly down against the gale, a fox's eyes all the way to Juniper Draw. Smoke went flat, then straight, then flat again. June opened the spill by the half finger she'd promised. The rill made its counting noise, not music, just the steady say-so a man could work to. They moved hay bales into a mouth that the wind would not bite. Mesa and Caleb shouldering from the lee, Anna on the stack throwing down, June calling gusts like a coxswain. Tallow went on hooves till the barn smelled like a tanner's dream. Sheep bunched and blinked in the glow. Cattle slung their heads and bawled once, then remembered their manners. The river spoke first in the ribs. A slow, heavy thump that made the torches lean. "Plug shifting," June said, chalk voice gone hard. "Hold the count, Mesa, gate." They cut across the yard on the wand line, leaning into gusts that shoved a man sideways in his own boots. At the spill, ice sheets skated and shattered. June's pole worked the lip like a surgeon's hand, easing the force down so it didn't run wild. Caleb grabbed a pry and went to lever a dam of crust from the hay barn corner where drifts were climbing for blood. "Push now," he called, reading a lull that wasn't a lull, only the wind drawing breath. Anna's pitchfork paused. "Hold that!" Caleb heaved anyway. The stack's face sloughed like a bad tooth. Bales barked loose. One torch died under white, and the shadow the loss made shocked the herd. The small pen went crazy. 2 calves bolted, hit the iced edge of the yard, and slid like toys toward the dark. "Jesus," Caleb said, "no use to anybody," and ran. June's shout cut him off at the shin. "Wind breaks right in 3, 2, now. Get left of them." He didn't argue this time. He cut left, took the gust on the shoulder, and let it knock him to the line he wanted. He caught the first calf by the tail and felt the slick, terrified strength whip his gloves to glass. Anna hit the second with a rope, low and mean. The loop bit, the calf bawled, dug its feet, and the world came back into a circle men and women could own. "Price paid," June panted, already moving. "Hold it there." They lashed fresh bales, quick and dirty, to brace the corner his mistake had opened. Caleb's breath sawed. Shame tasted like iron and old pennies. "I read it wrong," he said into the wind. June didn't even look up. "Then read the next one right." The river banged again, closer, uglier. Somewhere upstream a mass shouldered the bottleneck and began to slide. Mesa's face went a color that wasn't about cold. She watched the rill the way a hawk watches a rabbit's last thought. "Not the river," she told herself. "Not yet." "Creek lip," June said, and they ran that way, following the torch eyes, bodies bent like letters written by a child. At the Salt Fork's edge the world narrowed to gray, and a sound like claws under a door. Ice wore a glaze as thin as lies. Caleb set the pry and felt the tremor come through iron into bone. "We take it in chunks," he said. "Let it run where we aim it." He stepped for a better bite. His heel found nothing. The glaze went out from under him like a bad promise. He dropped to a knee and then through to the thigh. Water hit like a fist. It bit him higher, fast, and tried to take him under the shelf and make him a story folks told in spring. "Don't," Mesa said. Not a scream, just a word that sounded like a rope thrown. She was moving before the others cursed. Her fear was in her eyes, but it didn't have her hands. She pinned the willow line with one boot, looped the hand-braided rope through a fence ring with a cleaner motion than hope, and went flat on the ice, elbows set, weight spread. "Knife," she said. Caleb's hand found the bone scales by reflex. He snapped the blade with fingers that didn't want to answer and hacked at the coat seam the current had in its teeth. The knife skittered once. Mesa's rope found his wrist and bit down. She didn't haul. She leaned and gave him her weight like a door that won't be kicked. "Kick back," she said. "Not down. Back." He kicked. Boots found the shelf. June and Anna hit the line behind Mesa and made a human fence. The three of them took his weight and the river's insult together. Caleb's knees scraped ice, then dirt. The water let go like a sulk and went looking for someone easier to bully. He lay there laughing, short, cracked barks that steamed like a mule, and then he wasn't laughing. He rolled, coughed river and bile, and blinked up at snow the color of old pewter. Mesa stayed on her belly a breath longer, eyes on the gap as if daring it to take something else. Then she sat back on her heels and shook, not dainty, not hidden, like a person who had set down a load that had lived on her since a winter a long time ago. "Thank you," Caleb said, and it came out useless and true. "Don't make me do it again," she said, voice even now. Mallory's horse slid into sight on the line, nostrils flared white, the sergeant's coat wearing a new skin of snow. He took in the rope, the hole in the ice, the torches dragging their yellow along the ground, the patched hay face, the calves breathing hard and alive. He didn't say good work. He said what mattered. Plug went. Pressure's off some. You bought time. He swung down, put his gloved hand into the rill box, felt the count, nodded once. His eyes crossed Caleb's wet coat and Mesa's rope-burned palms and made a small, private decision. "I'll put it in writing," he said, quietly, almost to himself. "What I saw? Who held what?" Wind fell out of a gust and into a steady quarrel. Snow went from fist to sand. The torches steadied. June tapped the spill with her pole and closed it a whisper, reading a future made 15 minutes long and making it enough. Anna set a hand on Caleb's shoulder, weighed it, and left it there the time it takes to say "you're still here" without spending a word on it. "Back to the corner," she said. "We fix what we broke and we count again." "2 calves," Caleb said, the number sour. "2 calves," June agreed. "Not 20. Read the wind." They moved until the night had no edges, and the yard took their shape again. When they finally stopped, every breath was a blade and every glove a bucket. The river muttered like an old man left to his chair. Somewhere under a drift, a torch sighed out, and no one minded. The worst of the white had passed. "Price paid small," Ike said from the porch shadows, voice like a boot set by the door. "Good. Big prices are for fools and liars." Caleb looked at the rope marks on Mesa's wrists, at June's chalked knuckles, at the soot line on Anna's cheek where her glove had missed. He felt the knife heavy and right in his pocket, and the deed lighter than paper ever gets. "Hold till daylight," Anna said. "Then we see who's still brave in town." Morning didn't rise so much as thin. The storm lay down but kept its breath in our faces, a steady quarreling wind that nagged the ears and made talk short. Torches guttered weak and proud along the willow line. The hay face held where we'd braced it crooked honest. 2 calves slept nose to nose, still wearing last night's scare. Hoof iron rang out of the gray. Clay Doolin came back with 2 men bow-legged from nothing but town saddles. Snow salt starred his black coat and made it look true for once. The tin seal he'd stuck to the barn door winked like a cheap coin. He reined at the porch line and lifted his chin so we could admire it. "I advised you yesterday," he called, voice oiled. "County seal's on. Any tampering is a chargeable offense. I'm here to verify compliance." Anna stood at the jamb, not across the threshold, not back of it, right where a house shakes hands with weather. June leaned a shoulder to the post, slate tucked under her arm, eyes on the spill box that still counted the way it had been told. Mesa had raw bands across the wrists where rope had bit. Caleb, he stood where a man who earned half his keep might stand, not yet in, not out. "You're late to help and early to boast," Anna said. "We're busy keeping the hay from walking to the river." Doolin's mouth jerked. "No stock movement across sealed property. That's the law until Judge Halbert—" Runner Hiss cut him off. Ike slid in on his sled like a man who'd been taught by winter. and took good notes. Greener across his knees, barrel dull with old hand oil. The mule shook its head and blew steam at the porch as if to warm the boards for us. Ike didn't climb down. He just set the sled sideways to the wind so it made a wall. "Back it up, son," he said pleasantly. "You're leaking words on folks who worked while you slept." Doolin's men fidgeted. The storm had sanded the shine off their talk. Doolin squared his shoulders at Ike, then thought worse of it, and turned to Caleb instead. "Mr. Rourke," he let the name hang like a coat he meant to claim. "As purchaser of record, you'll appreciate the need for order. County recognizes Pike's paper. You'll also appreciate consequences if—" Another horse shouldered out of the white. Sergeant Mallory, greatcoat crusted, mustache rhymed. He'd ridden with his collar up and his jaw set. The army seat sat clean in the saddle, not pretty. He took the place in with one slow sweep. The hay bracing, the torches sunk to eyes, the rill kept to count, the calves breathing, the tin seal pretending to matter. His look paused on Mesa's rope burns, on the wet line dried stiff on Caleb's coat, on June's chalk-black hands. Something decided behind his eyes. "Mornin'," he said. The word didn't ask permission. "Ice plug broke. Pressure's eased, but she could shove again. You got lanes cut?" "We do," June said. Doolin lifted the roll of papers like a preacher holds a book folks haven't heard. "Sergeant, you can witness. This property's under seal. I require assurance." Mallory put a gloved finger to the tin disc and flicked it. The thing made a small, comic pop like a child's toy. He looked at Doolin as if measuring the man's height and finding inches missing. "I witness what I see," he said. "I saw 4 people hold a yard through a whiteout so the road won't stink of dead beef come thaw. I also saw you stamp a circle to a door without raising a bale." "That's county authority," Doolin snapped. "Your captain." "My captain will read my report," Mallory said, flat as a plank. He took a notebook from inside his coat, the covers warped with wet and duty, and licked a pencil that didn't deserve it. He wrote standing up, boots sunk to the eyelets. "State your names as you use them on the ground," he said, without looking up. "Anna Gray Eyes," Anna said. "June Redbird. Mesa Rose." "Caleb Rourke," Caleb added, tasting the order, liking it. Mallory wrote it plain. "Rourke with Gray Eyes, Redbird Rose, operating partnership at Juniper Draw." He didn't flourish. He underlined once, heavy like a nail. Doolin laughed wrong. "That isn't a filing. You have no standing to confer." "Standing's what I watched last night," Mallory said. "Paper will catch up if town's got any sense. I'll carry this to Clerk Simmons myself and speak to Captain Orr. Relief hay gets released where work and stock will make it count." He tore the page neat, folded it, slid it into an oilskin, then tapped it square with his glove. "That's field judgment. Love this tale? Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep the West wild." The wind shoved a sheet of blown snow between the men like a judge's robe. Ike grinned into it, a slow fox smile that never left his teeth. "Law's slow on a good day," he said, as if quoting a friend. "Storm ain't. We ain't either." Doolin reached for the tin seal, angry at the sound it hadn't made for Himmus. Greener metal clicked quiet in Ike's old hands. Not a threat, just a reminder that winter wasn't the only thing with a say. "Touch that and you'll hurt your finger," Ike said amiably, "and likely your pride when you pull back a stump of both." Doolin's men moved their horses 2 steps without meaning to. The saddles told on them. No day's sweat in the blankets. No hay dust on latigos. Caleb stepped forward because his legs did it before his history could argue. He set himself not between Doolin and the door, but between Doolin and the women. Thin line, honest line. "You put your seal on yesterday," he said. "We put ours on after. Ours holds hay through a blow and keeps calves on their feet. Sergeant's writing says that's the line Clerk Simmons will read first if he's smart. He didn't look at Anna when he said it. He didn't need to. June flipped her slate up with 2 fingers. She had sketched a simple map in chalk. Yard, lanes, spill, wind arrows, notations at each torch. She held it where Doolin had to lower his chin to see. "We'll add your stamp to the plan if it can stand adrift," she said. "Else it belongs in your pocket." Doolin stared at the white marks and saw nothing inside them but inconvenience. He shoved the papers into his coat like a boy stuffing a bad grade, jerked his reins hard enough to annoy his horse, and found enough air in his lungs to say, "This isn't done. Pike can talk to the river," Mesa said, voice mild as fence wire. "See which of them listens." Mallory folded his notebook, buttoned the oilskin, and laid 2 fingers against the brass key on the jamb, as if to bless a flag he served but didn't own. "I'll be in town before night," he said. "Tolliver will weigh straight when I'm watching. Haskins will mind his boots. Clerk Simmons will hear operating partnership and the names I wrote. If the judge gets through, he'll stamp a temporary standing, so bills of sale don't go hungry. If he don't, Winter stamped it already." He mounted, checked his cinch, turned the horse into the hard light. "You held," he said, and that was all the praise the army allowed. Ike eased the sled straight, the greener settling like a cat into his lap. "Best ride, paperman," he told Doolin. "Cold'll set a proper temper on that mouth if you keep it open much longer." Doolin swallowed whatever else he had. Pride don't love frostbite. He heeled out with his pair of shadows pulling after, their tracks filling behind them as if the country was glad to forget. Silence again. Our kind. We could hear the rip counting, the hay settling into the shape we told it to hold, a sheep sneezing like an old uncle. June breathed once ragged, then grinned small at the slate, as if it had passed a schoolmaster. "Your windbreak held," Caleb said. She shrugged. "We paid for the lesson last year. This year we kept the receipt." Anna's hand touched the jam, then slid to the key and let it swing one slow arc. "Rourke," she said, "not soft, not hard. Town will read this a day later than the storm. When it does, you will stand in it with our names and not spit them out." "I will," he said, and found the answer sitting there warm in his chest, like a small stove doing its job. Mesa flexed her rope-burned wrists and looked toward the river. The fear had gone out of her face and left something leaner. "We should warm the calves and eat," she said, "then check the lanes again. Storm likes a second bite." "Storm can ask," Ike said, gathering his lines. "We'll answer." Mallory trotted into the thinning white until horse and man became rumor. Doolin's trail faded to a suggestion, and then nothing at all. The porch light made it square. The key swung and settled. The day took our names and pinned them where we could see them, on paper, maybe by sundown, on the yard already. "Home's a verb," Anna said, almost to herself. "Best kind," Caleb answered, and the wind didn't argue. The wind worried the rafters the rest of the day, and then lost interest. By dusk the yard had our shape again. Lanes sat clean. Torches smoked themselves small. We brought the 2 calves into the tack room, rubbed them with burlap till their ears went pink and their breaths stopped wobbling. The world quit shouting and went back to the kind of talking a body can live with. Inside the stove glowed like a red coin. Wet coats steamed on kegs. Hands went raw to shiny, the way winter polishes people who don't leave. June poured coffee so black a spoon might hide in it. Mesa wrapped her wrists with a strip of old shirt and didn't wince. Anna set a clay pot near the heat, ate and lifted the lid. Corn, mush, and onions, the smell of tallow that says, "You did today what you meant to do." We ate quiet, when a house has been braced against weather all day. Supper is a kind of prayer said with mouths full. Caleb took his share and not a lick more. The cat put one paw on his boot and claimed it. That counted after June chalked a last mark on her slate, a small X where the spill would sit overnight. 2 fingers and a whisper, she said. North's softened. We sleep in turns. Mesa nodded. I'll take second. If the river speaks, I'll hear it. It'll talk nice for a while, June said, and set the slate down like a priest lays a book. Anna stood at the jamb, where she always stood, half in the world and half in the house. She looked at the yard through the frost-laced pane and then at us. The brass key swung lazy on its thong, ticking the beam, when the door breathed. Come here, she told Caleb. He came to the line he had learned to stop at, and stopped there. Habit can look like respect when it's done right. Anna reached to the peg and lifted a new blanket. A churro weave tight as a promise, gray and cream in bands like riverbed stone. She spread it across the table so the lamplight found the work in it, the small, steady decisions that make warmth later. You carried paper up this draw, she said. You carried it like a man who expected it to decide his life for him. We watched you set it down and pick up other things, rope, pry, calves that didn't want to be here anymore. We watched you keep your mouth smaller than your hands. Her eyes didn't blink. You're going to stay with us. The words landed easier than any stamp. They didn't ask. They told. They sounded like home because they required work. Caleb let a breath out slow. Stay and work, he said, to make sure he'd heard right. Eat here, sleep here, answer for what happens under this roof. Home's a verb, Anna said. You do it or you don't. You don't pocket the key. You don't speak for us without us. You stand in town with our names in your mouth, and you don't spit when the room goes cold. You make your mistakes where we can see them and fix them where we can help. June's mouth tilted. And you trim the lantern right. That thing'll soot the rafters if you get lazy. Mesa slid him a look that wasn't a smile and wasn't not. Don't snore, mean, she said. Barn walls are thin. Caleb reached into his pocket and brought out the bone-handled knife. He set it on the blanket. The blade had taken a skitter last night and kept an honest nick. Then he looked at the key. Anna lifted it from the beam and laid it on the blanket beside the knife. Metal on wool. House beside hand. He didn't take it. He put the knife across it like a roof set over a door. Key hangs, he said. We keep it where eyes can find it. We decide together when it turns. Anna looked at the small crossed metals and then at him. Something eased in her face that had been braced a long time. All right, she said. June fetched the ledger she kept for hay and debt, and the kind of numbers that believe work first. She drew a line across a clean page and wrote in neat block. Rourke, board and work, same as the rest. Beneath it she put the date and a small remark. Wind paid, calves saved, no embellishment, nobody needed any. Sergeant Mallory's oilskin lay on the table edge where he'd set it to dry earlier. He'd left us a copy of his note, folded square as a soldier's blanket. Anna touched it with 2 fingers, then slid it under a candle stub to keep. Town will come round by inches, she said. Storm already has. Caleb took the end of the blanket and folded it back, careful of the key. The wool rasped his knuckles, a home sound. He looked at the 3 of them and saw what the day had shown him in pieces. June's numbers weren't pride. They were a way to tell the wind no. Mesa's silence wasn't distance. It was a kind of care that saves breath for what matters. Anna's law wasn't soft. It was the only kind that holds. When other laws have gone to town and forgot the road home. I'll bunk where you say, he told them. Take the cold watch you give me. Ride to Tolliver and Haskins when it's time, and use the name like it belongs to all of us." "It does," Anna said. She picked up the key, let it swing once, then hung it back on the beam. The little click it made sounded more official than any clerk's stamp. June pushed a cup toward him. "To staying," she said. "Word nobody should say easy." They drank coffee that tasted like it had learned English in church. The cat switched to his other boot. Outside, Wind tried the latch and thought better. The house ticked and settled, a tired animal lying down. When the first watch came, Mesa pulled her coat and went out into the blue dark. June banked the stove. Anna blew the lamp to a gold pearl and left it. Shadows climbed the walls and sat down like neighbors who knew when to shut up. Caleb rolled in his blanket under the rafters where tools hung with their mouths closed. He lay on his side and listened for the spill, for the river, for the mule's light stamp as Ike turned in his own bed somewhere beyond our fence. He heard instead the small, steady song a key makes when it remembers where it hangs. It was enough. He slept like a man who has been given a job and the rules to keep it by. Love this tale? Hit like, share, and subscribe to keep the West wild. Morning came on slow and honest. The sky had scrubbed itself to tin and then to pale milk. Snow still owned the corners, but the yard took our shape without argument. We fed, we watered, we rubbed the two calves again, till their ears stayed warm on their own. Work went into hands and stayed there. "Town," Anna said at last, while the roads thinking kindly. We harnessed the sled and saddled Rowdy for Caleb. June folded Mallory's oilskin note and slid it into her coat. Mesa checked lashings like a woman who had seen rope save men and wasn't about to let rope fail for want of attention. Ike clicked his mule and grinned like a fox that planned to watch a henhouse from the front row. The track down canyon wore a gloss the sun hadn't got around to dulling. Trees leaned in with last night's load and shook themselves as we passed, dropping little avalanches that went soft against shoulders used harder. The river sulked under cut banks, tired of its tantrum. Town smelled like coal smoke and stale beer, like always. People had their storm faces on, eyes pinched, hats low, a little more neighborly because winter demands it. Tolliver's scale squatted in the street like a preacher who mostly meant well. Haskins' office glittered with false promises from a brass spittoon and a clean window. The county building had a door that stuck and a clerk who didn't. Clerk Simmons had a careful mustache and a pen that liked to write its name better than anybody else's. He looked up when we crowded the counter. Anna nearest, June with the oilskin, Caleb shoulder to shoulder with them, Mesa a half step back and watching the room the way a good dog watches a doorway. "Morning," Simmons said. "Filings are delayed. Judge Halbert's due when the trail lets him." "Your trail just did," Sergeant Mallory said, stepping from a bench near the stove where he'd been warming his coat and his temper. He tapped the oilskin. "Field report, Juniper Draw, Rourke with gray eyes, Redbird Rose operating partnership. Relief hay to be sold to the names I wrote. Captain Orr concurs." Simmons' eyes went to the oilskin, to Mallory, to our faces, and back to the paper. He read it twice, men like him always did, once for the words, once for the trouble. "Partnerships file on Tuesdays," he offered, weak as tea. "Today's Tuesday where the cattle are," Mallory said. Simmons licked his pen because that's what clerks do when a soldier is looking at them. He opened a big book that smelled like damp wool and wrote in letters that would still be ready 100 storms from now. "Rourke et al., operating partnership at Juniper Draw." He underlined it with a stroke that almost had courage. The door shoved open on its own bad hinges. Judge Halbert came in with a beard full of road and a look like a man who had slept in a buggy because he had. He set his hat on the stove edge, held his hands to the heat, and nodded to Mallory without lifting his head. "Morning, folks," he said to the room. "What needs doing that winter hasn't already done?" Simmons pushed the book across and tapped the fresh letters. Halbert read, thought, looked at our boots and our coats and the way we stood. He looked at the soldier's note and then at our hands. Judges who last up here learn to read more than paper. Temporary standing for this season's transactions, he said, and reached for the stamp. If anybody's got a better claim, they can bring it without a ribbon on it, and we'll talk when the road chooses to let them. The stamp thumped. The sound went through the counter and into our bones. It wasn't the warm click the brass key made, but it belonged beside it. Doolin walked in a breath later like a man who'd hoped the room would be different. He saw the judge, the soldier, the open book, and the line of our shoulders. Pride can navigate a blizzard, but it doesn't love a crowd. Your Honor, he began. Later, Albert said without looking up. After I buy a coffee, I can trust and write 3 letters Winter already wrote first. Doolin backed out with his papers like a boy who had found the wrong classroom. We left the county with the kind of slip a person keeps under a candle stub and a stove lid, with Mallory's nod and Simmons's careful signature drying under a dusting of coal ashes. Outside, the wind got friendly. That happens sometimes when town behaves. At Tolliver's scale, the arm swung true the first time we watched it. Ike stacked 2 check weights on for show, and Tolliver swallowed it like medicine. Winter's a great accountant, he said, and we pretended that was a joke and not a confession. Haskins kept his boots shiny even on a day like this. He looked at Anna, at June, at Mesa, at Caleb, at the paper, at Mallory leaning in the doorway a block down and not looking, and he arranged his face into a listening shape. We sold 3 thin steers and 2 culls at a price that didn't make us proud but didn't make us spit. He counted out dollars slow, the way a man counts when he is thinking about a new way to be decent. Co-sign here, he said, and pushed the bill. Anna took the pen. June steadied the page. Caleb signed last and smallest. Mesa watched the numbers and then nodded once. The shallowest boo a buyer gets from her. That'll do, Haskins said. You folks need salt or wire. You take it at cost. He said it like a man finding a fence line he meant to follow for a while. We bought salt, we bought wire, we bought coffee that didn't deserve the name and beans that did. People touched their hats. Some touched their hearts. Storms make communities the way fire tempers steel. Back up the draw, the afternoon light went the color of brass, left in a pocket. We slid the sled into the yard and stabled like we meant to be there tomorrow and the next day. The calves blinked at us like old men who had decided to live just to be stubborn. June took down her slate and wrote, Hay, hold, law, ink, temp, wind, easy. She put it by the door where our eyes could find it. Anna hung the stamped slip under the lamp with Mallory's note and our ledger page. 3 texts a house needs when the weather and the market argue. Mesa ran a hand under the spill and smiled at the count like a person checking a pulse. Caleb set the wire on the bench like a promise and put the salt where a body could reach it in the dark. Ike stood with his mitts off and his fingers near the stove, stealing heat like an honest thief. He watched Caleb pull his boots and set them under the key. That little act made a sound in the room that wasn't a sound at all. It was how a house recognizes a new thing that belongs. Reckon you ain't homeless no more, boy, Ike said, chewing like a man who had earned the right to say a thing once and never again. Keep your boots by the door. Winter's got long teeth. Caleb smiled without showing much of it. He stroked a thumb over the nick on the knife blade and then looked at the key. It hung where it always hung, just high enough a person had to stand up straight to touch it. He didn't take it down. He didn't need to. Keys are for thresholds. We had stepped across. Supper went on easy. Coffee tasted less like penance and more like a thing that keeps hands working. We didn't talk about Doolin or Pike. We didn't have to. Paper had come along at its own slow walk, and joined the truth the yard already held. That's all a person can ask from town. Later, when the house had settled and the river muttered like a tired uncle, the cat found Caleb's boot again and sat, like it planned to be there till spring. June tucked the ledger away and blew out the lamp to a pearl. Mesa took first watch by habit, not fear. Anna stood at the jamb with her palm quiet on the wood, as if listening to the house, listening to us. Trust held the roof up from underneath. Outside, winter breathed and waited its turn again. Inside, we set our names where they belonged, on work, on law, on a key you don't pocket, and let the quiet carry the rest. Snow will come again, it always does, but a house that keeps its key where every eye can find it tends to hold. If this tale sat right with you, tell me. Drop 0 if you'd have ridden on, or 1 if you'd have stayed. Tap subscribe and ride with me for the next trail story. Same plain coffee, same long wind, same small honest reckonings.